want to give you an introduction now to the work that we'll be doing together today as a congregation. As I mentioned at the beginning of the service, this is an unusual service because we want to give you some information and answer some questions and try to help the whole congregation take an important step forward toward settling on one final area of work for our Before We Get to Mars project. Super quickest introduction possible. Since I have been here for the last 5 years, one of the common hopes that I hear from the congregation is that we will have what you might call a signature project by which we are known in the community, by which we can unify ourselves as a congregation and focus ourselves as a congregation, using that signature project as a statement of who we are and what we care about and our engagement with the world in which we live. We encourage at Union Church, of course, children in the statements that you read every week on the cover of the worship order. We encourage children to be socially engaged, along with having personal, curious, and generous Christian faith. And we want to help set the example for that as a congregation. And so we have begun this Before We Get to Mars decision-making process. Now you might ask, okay, why Mars? What does Mars have to do with it? Maybe you've heard me say this before, but NASA currently estimates that we will have a human being on Mars by the middle of the 2030s. And that seems like a good long time and a reasonable amount of time to get something really significant done and yet still identifiable enough so that it's not just forever in the future. And so we want to have a project of maybe 15 years or so that we can focus on and accomplish something really great together as a congregation. Now, of course, there is a biblical grounding for this as well, and that is that we are called as God's people to be light, right? To be light to the world. Whatever light God has managed to give us, it's our job as we sing at this service to let our little light shine. And so we want to make our light shine in the world and be in partnership with others, be in relationship with others, and bring the blessing of God and of faith, bring the blessings of life to others as well. That, of course, is indeed an answer to the biblical message. Jesus himself says to some people who were criticizing him, he says, look, you do the religious work. This is Mike's paraphrase. You do the religious work. The question is that you have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and trust. It is these you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others. So by all means, it is important for our relationship with God that we do the religious stuff. But that in and of itself is not enough according to Jesus. We must practice justice and mercy and trust through our lives engaged with other people. Of course, I could quote from the prophets, from Isaiah or Hosea or Micah or Amos, Hosea, Isaiah. There is the great one from Micah, of course, which says, He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? To do justice is part of our worship of God. And that's what we want to do together as a congregation. So we are in the process of trying to decide what that work will be. We have narrowed it down by our congregational vote to 4 areas of work: food/hunger, and education, and jobs and gun violence. And so today you're going to hear a little bit more of just sort of the personal connection to each one of these issues. We've asked members of our planning team to, for a moment, act as a partisan toward one of these issues. Say, why is this one particularly meaningful to you? Why do you think this is the one that we should adopt? But of course, the whole planning team will be very happy with whatever comes out as the top choice of the congregation. But we wanted to give you that emotional connection to each one of these issues. And then finally, a quote from Leonard Bernstein, the great music conductor and writer. He was a man who accomplished a stunning amount of work in his life, leading the New York Philharmonic and writing symphonies and doing a million other things in life. And one of the key things that he said was that to achieve great things, two things are needed: a plan and not quite enough time. And so we've only got till the middle of the 2030s, people. So we've got to get busy and get this done. And so let us learn about and then decide our final area before we get to Mars. We're going to start with introducing you to the education question. So Sharon, come on up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to talk to you today about quality education. 45 years ago, 45 years ago, I enrolled my daughter in the Union Church preschool, and a couple of years after that, my son in the mother-child school. As a parent of a child in a Union Church preschool, I attended a class. In that class, I learned how to active listen. As a result of active listening and as a result of learning how to better parent and maintain those parenting skills, my life was transformed. Not only was my relationship with my children vastly improved, my relationship with myself was improved. In February, we had speakers on these topics, on these 4 topics, address the church. The thing they stressed the most was the importance of good pre-education or good preparation for the education that would follow. What is preparation for education? Preparation for education is love, support, hope, good nutrition, stable housing, and freedom from trauma. If children don't receive those elements, their brains don't develop. If their brains don't develop, the very best schools and the very best teachers are not of much help. Education is a prerequisite and a foundation for jobs, for housing, for prevention of gun violence, for prevention of hunger. As a church with an amazing track record in the area of preschool education, we would have a leg up on solving some of the lack of education in our most struggling schools, not only in Chicago, but in DuPage County, or perhaps a 10-mile area, 20 Mile, 30, as an example. That's an example of something that we not only could do, but which would hold out great hope for a marvelous Before We Get to Mars project. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Katie Safarchuk, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Jobs Creation Committee. Who remembers their first job? It might be something you haven't thought about in a long time. My first job was at McDonald's, and at 15 years old, I remember how liberating and how empowering it was receiving that first paycheck. It wasn't just about how much money that piece of paper meant, but how it felt to have earned it. Wow, look what I just earned. This experience is addressed in the book Charity Detox, which some of you may have read. In paraphrase, the book states, "All people were created with a desire to be useful." Anyone who has even contributed to the workforce, cared for a child or a loved one, volunteered, you all understand what your added value, your use, what it feels like in spirit. I still feel that way when I receive my paycheck. In fact, I actually do not have auto deposit for that very reason. I like that magical moment of holding my paycheck, looking at the value, feeling the value. In February, we had 3 powerful presentations on the topics of jobs, all in 3 different realms of the workforce, working with folks to make a better life for themselves, working to acquire a job that opens doors, a job that can become the key to unlocking the door to a new future, a key to fulfilling hopes and dreams, leading one person, a family, a community towards a better future. A future where a job provides housing, where a job provides a benefit package, where a job puts healthy food on the table, where a job allows your family to sit and connect through a meal, leading by example and inspiring your children to do the same. In short, it is the story of teaching a man to fish. The man or woman wants to learn. Again, it is in our nature to feel of value and of use. So how do we get to the teaching part? We've learned in our jobs panel that many struggle with childcare or transportation issues, and we also understand that if there are no opportunities, there is no ambition. Father Greg Boyle, founder of Homeboy Industries in LA, the largest gang intervention, rehabilitation, and reentry program in the world, is quoted in saying, "Nothing stops a bullet like a job." Additionally, he references a recovered heroin addict, gang member, and formerly homeless trainee, and valued Homeboy member Luis. Luis shares his story of domestic violence, where at age 6, his mother asked, "Why don't you just kill yourself? You're such a burden." At age 9, his mother took him to an orphanage, pretending he was not her son. He remained there for 90 days until his grandmother tracked him down. Luis was the victim of daily abuse, beaten and bleeding. He wore 3 shirts to school each day, one to absorb the blood, the second to hide the blood from his first shirt, and the third for appearances. He was teased for his 3 shirts in the 80-degree weather. While Luis's struggles were not logistics like childcare or transportation, with the help of a job at Homeboy Industries, he prevailed. Luis shares his story, his scars from abuse, stating, "My wounds are my friends. After all, how can I help heal the wounded if I don't welcome my own wounds?" Many hurdles can prevent any of us in securing a job to provide and secure our future. Let's work as a congregation to help those yearning to leap over and past their hurdles, hurdles that can easily be cleared with opportunity, with kinship, and with hope.
to you about gun violence reduction. I'm sorry I tried to jump up so quickly, but I'm so excited about gun violence reduction and the importance of it for our congregation. I remember my first job. My first job was a camp counselor in Nassau, Bahamas, which I thought was going to be a beautiful, exotic place. Very close by is beautiful and exotic, but where I was working was ridden with drugs and unemployment and violence. One evening, I was playing basketball on a basketball court, and as I tend to do when I play sports, talking a bit of trash, and finished the game and went in. I heard a stirring outside the house and ran out, and it was the gentleman I was talking trash to with a gun, shooting at the house I was living at and anybody in the area. I have, much like the gentleman we were talking about earlier, scars to remember that, 2 matching scars on my knees. I saw a couple kids out there, grabbed them, and we very bravely jumped into a rose bush till the police came. At the core of that is the inability of individuals at times to resolve their violent interactions. And our hope is, with a gun violence reduction program, to help people deal with limiting violence as best as we can. Gun violence reduction is not gun violence control. Gun violence reduction can be working on a macro level with organizations such as Do Not Stand Idly By, that works with gun manufacturers and different area leaders in stopping the proliferation of illegal guns, helping to make consumers of guns and manufacturers of guns act more responsibly. We could also partner with a group like Homeboy Industries, and as Katie was earlier saying, the best way to stop a bullet is with a job. I argue it could be with a job. I argue it could be with better education programs, better community involvement. There's a lot of things we as a congregation can do. Let's be clear, the gun violence problem in Hinsdale is not a big problem in Hinsdale, but we're pretty close to places that it is a big problem. As a congregation, we could work to save lives. I'm a therapist, social worker by trade, and what I often say to people who are unsafe is, I can work with you on your issues, but I cannot work with a corpse. Let's do our best as a congregation to limit unnecessary corpses in this world. Thank you.
My name is Michelle Crow, and I am going to wrap it all up with food, justice, and hunger. Food is just absolutely a basic necessity of life to nourish our bodies and give us the strength to get through our days, to nourish our souls by sitting with our families at the end of the day and enjoying a meal, to give us skills in preparing that meal and sometimes even growing the food to make the meal. In some of our communities, food is available, but that nourishment isn't. There might be a fast food store, but not a place to buy an apple or to buy an apple affordably. So food justice, and I want to read this because I want to get it right, is communities exercising their right to grow, sell, and eat healthy food. Healthy food is fresh, nutritious, affordable, culturally appropriate, and grown locally with care for the well-being of the land, workers, and animals. People practicing food justice wind up with a strong local food system, self-reliant communities, and a helpful environment. Those of you who garden at home know that wonderful time in August when you can't possibly can all the tomatoes or make any more loaves of zucchini bread, and your neighbors see you coming with your wonderful gifts of food. For many communities that start a grassroots food justice organization, because food justice is very grassroots, that becomes a way to earn, a way to have that first job. a way to have a stand at the farmer's market, or a donation-supported restaurant, or your own artisanal honey, and it just kind of grows from there. We had 3 wonderful presentations in February. Purple Asparagus came to talk to us about the work they do introducing children in Chicago to different types of fruits and vegetables, because again, they have that fast food place on the corner, but they don't have a place to experience anything other than, maybe a banana, which they might get at a school breakfast, and we are grateful that they get that. But they, working with Purple Asparagus, get to see the real rainbow of food that's out there. Stan Cook from HCS Family Services talked to us about the need in our own area, which many of you and all the good work we do here at the church supporting the food pantry, and certainly so many of you volunteer your own time, know the good that's being done. And we saw a great video on a grassroots organization and some of the legislative work they've done. It's a really rich area to focus on. It can start with a community garden and grow from there, and it ties back to all of our other areas of concern. So that's food justice, and give it a thought. Thanks.
Will you go get another mic and then go around the congregation with it? Yeah. Great, thanks.
So we want to take some questions from the congregation about either more information about one of the areas of work or about the project as a whole. Questions about all of that are welcome. We have maybe 12 minutes or so to make this happen, so I'm going to be super quick and just tell you one thing first, and that is that remember that 2 things first. We're not going to stop doing the other things that we do as a congregation. This isn't meant to take the place of anything else. It's meant to be a focus or an addition for our work going forward. So we're not going to necessarily stop doing something, but maybe we'll do it in a different light. We'll do it with a different purpose than we did before. And then the second thing is that it is important to remember that the project that we ultimately choose will need to fit with our criteria for what makes a good project. So we know that any project we choose is going to have to be multifaceted. We want a point of entry for many different people in the congregation to get involved. It's going to have to be the proper scale. It's going to have to be small enough to be accomplishable, and yet big enough so that it is inspiring and makes us and the community feel like we are truly making a difference. It's got to be a good fit for the skills and interests of our congregation. We want to take advantage of the resources that we have available among us and put it to use for this project. And so it's got to be a good fit with who we are. We hope that the project will be attractive to our community. We want people to say, wow, I want to be a member of a church that does that kind of thing. We need to have measurable outcomes. We don't want to just say that we're going to do this and not have a way to evaluate whether we're actually accomplishing it. And finally, we want the final project to be transformative. We want not just to alleviate suffering, like to ameliorate suffering, but rather to transform it, so that there is less suffering in the world. We don't want to, for example, just feed people as the only part of the project, but rather make it so there are fewer hungry people in the world. And so we want the project to be transformative. So all of those criteria could fit in any one of the areas of work. So now our job is to narrow it down from our final 4 to the final area of work. And then the next stage in the process will be to narrow it down to what the specific project within that area of work will be. Okay, and with that, we want to welcome questions about either the 4 areas of work or about the whole project, and so have at it. Grant's going to come around with the microphone because we want everybody to be able to hear you.
Why is gun control ruled out as opposed to reducing gun violence?
Ross, you want to answer that?
I think there's a couple reasons for it. I also don't necessarily think if we're reducing gun violence, we're not proponents of gun control. But to be honest with you, gun violence is a public health issue. Gun violence is an issue that involves a lot more than just guns being around. It could involve inequality. It could involve people not receiving the mental health care or the substance abuse care they have. It could involve not knowing how to stop violence from escalating. If you look at a lot of programs that have reduced gun violence in the area, in different areas, I'm from Boston, and we had a program where Boston University merged with the Boston Public School Systems, and by teaching people how to resolve conflicts nonviolent, gun violence reduced by like 30% in a year. So it doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive of that, but gun violence is a little bit different in that we can still work to control the proliferation of illegal guns, to work with manufacturers to be more responsible. But in terms of gun control, not everybody might agree on that. Not everybody might think the same way about that. We're not legislators here. We're not lawmakers, but we are community members. And as a community, I believe gun violence reduction is something within our grasp.
Other questions? You all know exactly what you want. Tina. Will you use the mic? Hold it close.
Do you have information about homeboy industries, what they,
Katie, you okay answering that? Nope. Okay. So I've been following Homeboy Industries for a number of years, Tina and others. Homeboy Industries, you can learn everything you want at, I think it's just homeboy.org. And it started because Father Greg Boyle was a simple, everyday parish priest serving in a very violence-ridden community in LA. And simply as a way to serve his community, he had people walk in the door and say, Father G, I mean, I'd love to get out of the gang, but I got no other options. I got nothing else to do. And so he'd talk to another member of his congregation and say, hey, can you hire this guy to bake bread at your bakery? Because otherwise he's going to be in jail, in 3 months. And it just grew from there. And over the last 20 years, something like 80,000 at-risk youth have been involved in the program, and many of them have had long-term job success. And, the violence rate has plummeted in the community. And so that's how it all got started. It got started small and they built on it as a jobs program. Father Greg has actually, he still likes the phrase, nothing stops a bullet like a job. But he goes on to say, but a job's not enough. Because you need the supportive services, the kind of problem solving that Ross was just talking about, the ability to organize and the ability to control your emotions, figure out how to address things. It's those supportive, childcare for that matter, supportive services that go along with the job that really make it so successful. So again, that's just one example of the type of thing you could do to launch a jobs program, but it is a very powerful example. Yeah, great.
I think jobs are very important, and many people here remember the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps of the Depression, and young men, fine young men who had no place to go or work. They were moved into Army camps, run by the Army officers. They wore uniforms, but they didn't shoot rifles. They built bridges, dug ditches, today that there are a lot of 18 to 24-year-old young men, black and white, who have no jobs and no future. And I say, let's bring back the CCC and put those young people to work. We have Army camps all over this country. We have guys on reserve, officers that would be glad to come back and work for a while. And during the last World War, the first guys that went to the Army, the CCCs, when the war was over, in my town. When the war was over, these young men came back, married local girls, and became outstanding citizens of our town. I think it's something we should consider once more with people on the job.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I hadn't thought of that historical connection, but you're right. A lot of similarities with the kind of thing that needs to be done because, as Katie mentioned, people want to work. People love that experience of, actually, Father Greg talks about this as well at Homeboy Industries. It's, he says, the guys in the gangs in LA recognize that there's a difference between bad money and good money is worth a lot more. That's the money they make for themselves. I don't want to advocate for one position or another, but it does tie into all sorts of other great things. Yeah, Jessica. Take the mic, please. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Transportation is a big issue. As one example, one of the lower income communities nearby, of course, is Hinsdale Lake Terrace down on south of Hinsdale, and there is only one public bus that goes from Hinsdale Lake Terrace up into the Oak Brook area. There's one in the morning that goes up there. There's one in the afternoon, evening that goes back down there. And for anybody that can't afford a car is going to have an impossible time getting to a job. And that's the only one place that it goes to. But yes, we have identified that as an issue, and transportation would certainly be involved in the jobs issue if that's what we go with. Pam, back there?
Pastor, you've known us for a while. You know the community. What would you advise us?
Pam, I'll be happy to talk to you about that individually afterwards, but I'm afraid I can't answer that question. What I really want is for us to choose the thing that most people are most willing to get involved in and make a difference. So, that's not only the public right answer, that is absolutely what I feel. Now, if it was personally up to me, I can tell you individually what I would choose, but I really want the congregation to choose what they are most passionate about, what most people will involve in, what you would be thrilled to say, talk to somebody else in the community about, saying, well, Union Church does this great thing. And so whatever can answer that question is what I want. Yeah. Cindy?
I don't know if I can.
Oh, sorry, Andy's got the mic. Go ahead.
I've got the mic.
And then Cindy.
I just want to confirm what you said before, that we can pursue many of these other areas in conjunction. Looking at the education, so if we adopt a school, that it's not only supporting the education programs there and working with them, but we can also work with the parents. If there are issues around employment, that we could support them there. If there are issues around food justice with the family, not being able to be fed, for the children to come to school and have a full stomach. Brought up transportation, that's being able to take them to and from different places, allow them to come to classes, preschool here at the church, and also in terms of violence within their neighborhood. In one of the presentations, they spoke of coming to a local school here, removing themselves from some of those violent neighborhoods, but still encountering those kinds of things. So I just want to ensure we can cover a lot of these things, a lot of these other areas too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Everything he just said is absolutely true. And the way we thought about it as the planning team is that we realized a few months into this that really these are not separate issues, that this is all a circle. And the question is where we as a congregation want to jump into the circle and get to work. In some way, shape, or form, all of the other areas are going to be involved. And so it's a matter of where we want to jump in and put our focus at first. And Cindy gets to go next. Grant, bring the mic up here, please.
So my question is, if we go the jobs route, I'm hearing a lot of talk about men, but we ladies are half the population, and there's an issue there too. Are we going to be able to spread it out to the whole community, or are we going to be specific and go for one specific demographic?
I believe that the congregation will want to support jobs for everybody. I mean, if that's the issue, I think men, I don't know, maybe it's just popular media, seems like it is a little bit more in the forefront of people's minds. Like the statistic that we put on the sheet there, I mean, it's just striking that, the unemployment rate among black males in between age 20 and 24 in Chicago is 40%. You're right, that's like, okay, duh, what about women?
I'm guessing that the population of men, I don't think they're tracking unemployment.
Yeah, you're right. That might not even be tracked in an effective way. That's right. But yeah, absolutely. I'm sure the congregation will want to do something. I mean, that anything that we mention on the blue paper information sheet about the 4 areas is just an example. Don't think that anything we do is limited to that. Those are supposed to be evocative of the types of things we can think about in each one of the areas. So yes, absolutely. We'll work on, if it's jobs, we'll definitely include women. Yes, Joe. Okay, we got Joe and then one more, I guess, and we got to wrap up. It's good. Just hold it right next to your mouth.
Just one item here with regard to jobs. I think if we had a jobs bus or buses and transportation back to the North Carolina point, that would move from difficult areas to job availability where jobs are available. And there will be a lot of jobs available. The economy is coming back. There are a lot of jobs that are open jobs. People can't get to them. So we would have a union church bus, which would have union church on it, and would promote the fact that we are transporting youth or women, men to new jobs for a new life and a new beginning. That way we get notoriety. We'd be out there in the marketplace. People would say, gee whiz, here comes the union church bus, so I can get on it and I can go here, there, and other places to work. Because right now, the 40% can't get out of the ghetto.
Yeah. As part of a comprehensive solution, those are the kind of ideas we need to work with. Absolutely. I love it. Okay, and one more before we get going. Yes, Nancy.
I think that the easiest place to start.
Point it like this, Nancy.
Closer.
There you go.
Oh, it does change. I think if we start with education, all of the other things fall under that. Then children cannot go to school if they're hungry. And I think many of the mothers do not know the right education to buy the correct food to give the kids nutrition. The mothers need jobs so they can pay for the food they're buying. And if these kids get educated, they're going to grow up and they're not going to be shooting guns. So.
You just described the circle. You're absolutely right, Nancy. You're absolutely right. It really is true that it is all a circle. It's a matter of what you as an individual are most passionate about, what we as a congregation are going to be most passionate about overall. So take the insert that is in the blue information sheet. You can fill it out before you leave today if you feel like you're properly informed. You've read over the 4 sheets of information. Maybe you came to the retreat back in early February. If you feel like you can make an informed choice or ranking of the 4 choices, please do so. Don't just vote for number 1, by the way. Vote 1, 2, 3, 4, ranking them as it shows on the form. That form is also available online, so you can fill out the online version of it as well. You only get to vote once, though, so don't stack the deck. And indeed, we are called as partners in Christ's service. And so let us join together as a congregation in that work with our Before We Get to Mars project and in singing together now. Thank you.